Poor girl sits wrong table on blind date. Never thought he's millionaire and falls in love with her. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Emma felt the weight of the evening as she walked into the upscale restaurant. The high ceilings, the soft hum of conversations, and the clinking of silverware were all around her. It was a world she didn't belong to. Her second-hand dress clung awkwardly to her frame, and her scuffed shoes seemed out of place among the polished heels of the other patrons. She paused for a moment at the entrance, her heart racing. This was supposed to be a blind date, a setup arranged by her best friend Jenny. But she was already feeling nervous. Emma had never been to a restaurant like this before. She clutched her phone in one hand, checking the message again. Table 7. She whispered the number under her breath as she glanced around the room. She didn't expect to be surrounded by so much luxury, but Jenny had insisted that she should go. A small, nervous laugh escaped her lips as she spotted the table at the far corner. A man was already seated, his attention focused on his phone. He was dressed impeccably, in a well-fitted suit that looked like it cost more than everything Emma owned combined. He looked up as she approached. "Hi, you must be Kevin?" she asked, trying to sound confident, though her voice wavered slightly. The man blinked, surprised for a moment, but then his lips curled into a faint smile. Yeah," he said, his voice smooth but hesitant. "I'm Kevin." Emma hesitated for a moment, unsure whether to sit down or leave. But something about the way he said her name made her feel like it was okay. She pulled out the chair across from him and sat down. "Sorry about this. I thought you were someone else." "Blind dates are a bit awkward, huh?" she said, trying to break the ice. Kevin chuckled lightly, shaking his head. "No problem," he said, adjusting his posture slightly. "Yeah, blind dates are definitely something else." There was an awkward silence for a few moments, and Emma found herself fidgeting with her napkin. She was just trying to stay calm, to get through this, but the contrast between her and the man across from her was starting to feel more and more obvious. She noticed how his tailored suit seemed to almost glow under the soft light of the chandelier above. "So, what do you do?" she asked, trying to steer the conversation away from the awkwardness. "I'm in tech," Kevin replied casually. "I work in technology, mostly software development." Emma nodded, smiling faintly. "Tech? That's cool. Apps and stuff?" she asked, hoping to make the conversation flow a little easier. He nodded again, but his answer was vague. "Yeah, something like that," he said, giving her a small, enigmatic smile. Emma couldn't help but feel a bit of curiosity bubbling up inside her. He was giving her just enough to seem interesting, but not enough to know anything for sure. But she couldn't deny the charm in his easygoing demeanor. "And you?" Kevin asked, breaking her thoughts. "What do you do?" Emma hesitated, unsure whether she should admit to being a waitress at a diner. "I'm a waitress," she said after a moment, her voice quieter than she intended. "It's not glamorous, but it pays the bills." Kevin looked at her, his eyes softening for a moment. "Hey, that's honest work," he said, giving her a reassuring smile. Emma smiled back, feeling a little lighter. Maybe this wasn't going to be as bad as she thought. "So, how long have you been doing this tech thing?" she asked, trying to keep the conversation going. Kevin shrugged slightly. "A while," he said vaguely, glancing down at his phone again. "I've been in the field for a few years now. It's a lot sometimes." He seemed to be trailing off, as if he didn't want to go into more detail. Emma noticed that, but she didn't press him further. Instead, she leaned back slightly in her chair, still trying to figure out if she was actually enjoying this. For a moment, she caught a glimpse of Kevin's reflection in the window behind him. He looked much younger than she had expected, and something in his demeanor felt different now. But she quickly pushed those thoughts aside. She was here for a reason. Jenny had set this up, after all. But she couldn't ignore the little tug in her chest, the curiosity that had been building since they sat down. She was beginning to feel like there was more to Kevin than met the eye. And maybe, just maybe, there was more to this evening than she had expected. Emma found herself oddly at ease as the evening stretched on. The awkwardness of their first moments had begun to melt away, and for the first time that night, she allowed herself to relax just a little. "Kevin, despite his mysterious aura and vague answers, wasn't as intimidating as she'd initially thought. His presence was easygoing, like he was trying to make her feel comfortable, even though she was still unsure of who he really was. As they continued to talk, the conversation drifted to lighter topics. Emma found herself laughing at his dry humor, which she hadn't expected from someone who looked so polished. The contrast between them was still striking, but it was starting to feel like there was something more to this encounter than just a random mistake. Kevin asked her about her work as a waitress, and though she'd always felt a little self-conscious about it, something about his genuine interest made her share more than she usually did. "It's not glamorous," she said, swirling the water in her glass, "but it pays the bills. It's hard sometimes, but you learn to appreciate the little things. And you meet all kinds of people." Kevin nodded, his gaze thoughtful. "I can't imagine what it must be like," he said quietly. "It takes a lot of strength to do what you do." Emma smiled, a little surprised by the sincerity in his voice. "Thanks," she replied, feeling a small sense of pride. "It's not always easy, but it's honest work. You do what you can to get by." Kevin shifted in his seat, and Emma noticed a flicker of something in his eyes, as if he was deciding whether or not to say something. "What about you?" she asked, trying to steer the conversation back to him. "What's it like working in tech?" He hesitated for a moment, then shrugged slightly. "It's demanding, but it's what I've always wanted to do. There's a lot of pressure, but it's rewarding. In its own way." There was a slight pause, and Emma could sense that he wasn't saying everything. She didn't press him, but she could tell that Kevin was used to keeping things to himself. The conversation shifted again, this time to their families. Emma spoke about her mother, how she had passed away a few years ago, and how her father had never been a big part of her life. Kevin listened attentively, nodding along. He shared a little about his own family, but he stopped short of revealing too much. It was clear that Kevin was a private person, and Emma respected that. As the night wore on, their conversation grew more comfortable, and the differences between them seemed to fade into the background. Emma still couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, though. She had asked him a few questions about his job and his life, but he had been very vague with his answers, always turning the conversation back to her. He had mentioned his work in tech, but had said very little about the company he worked for or what exactly he did. Emma tried to push those thoughts aside. It wasn't her place to question him, not on a first date, and besides, there was something about him that made her want to know more. After dessert, Kevin suggested they take a walk around the city. "It's a nice evening," he said, standing up and offering her his hand. Emma hesitated for a moment, then accepted, a little surprised by how easily she said yes. The city streets were quiet, the lights from the buildings casting a soft glow on the sidewalk. They walked side by side, neither of them speaking at first. It was comfortable, though, as if they didn't need words to fill the silence. Kevin finally broke the quiet, his voice softer than usual. "You know, I didn't expect to meet someone like you tonight." Emma looked at him, curious. "What do you mean?" she asked, her heart beating a little faster. He smiled, but there was something wistful in his expression. "I mean, I didn't expect to meet someone who wasn't trying to impress me," he said, his eyes meeting hers. "I like that about you." Emma didn't know how to respond, but she felt a warmth spread through her chest. For the first time that evening, she felt like she was more than just a waitress sitting at the wrong table. They walked in silence for a while longer, the cool night air making Emma wish she had brought a jacket. Kevin noticed, and, without saying anything, slipped off his coat and draped it over her shoulders. Emma was taken aback by the gesture, but she smiled up at him, grateful. "Thanks," she said softly. Kevin nodded, giving her a small smile in return. "No problem." As they continued to walk, Emma's mind began to race. The evening had started out as a mistake, a simple mix-up that had led to an unexpected connection. But now, she found herself wondering if it was more than just that. Was it fate? Was it luck? She wasn't sure, but she couldn't deny the chemistry between them. Just as she was lost in thought, Kevin spoke again, his voice steady. "I know this might sound strange," he began, "but I feel like I've known you longer than just tonight. It's like we've crossed paths before, in another life, maybe." Emma smiled, feeling a flutter in her chest. "That's a strange thing to say," she said, but she couldn't help but feel the same way. There was something familiar about him, something that made her feel like they were meant to meet. For the first time in a long time, Emma felt like she was exactly where she needed to be. As Emma and Kevin continued their walk through the quiet streets, something shifted in the air. The cool night wrapped around them like a soft blanket, and the sounds of the city seemed distant, almost as if the world outside the two of them had faded into the background. They walked at a leisurely pace, side by side, and for a moment, it felt as though they were the only two people in the world. Emma glanced up at Kevin, wondering if he was feeling the same connection she was. His words from earlier echoed in her mind, the idea that they had somehow crossed paths before. Was it just a romantic notion, or was there something more? She couldn't tell, but she did feel it. That sense of familiarity, of a bond that was deeper than just the surface-level conversation they had shared. You know, Kevin said after a moment, breaking the silence. I don't usually open up like this. But with you, it feels different. Emma looked at him, her curiosity piqued. Different how? She asked softly, her heart beating a little faster. Kevin glanced down at the ground for a second, as if gathering his thoughts. I don't know. It's like, I can be myself around you. Not the guy with the perfect job, the suit, the wealth. Just me. Emma nodded slowly, understanding what he meant. She had always felt like she had to put on a mask when she was around people, pretending to be someone she wasn't. But with Kevin, she felt like she could drop her guard, even if just a little. I get that, she said. It's rare to meet someone who doesn't expect anything from you, you know? Kevin smiled softly, looking at her with a warmth that made Emma's chest tighten in a way she hadn't expected. They had only known each other for a few hours, but it felt like much longer. Emma had already started to let her guard down, which wasn't something she did easily. But something about Kevin made her feel safe. I think that's why I like being around you, Kevin said. You're real. No pretenses. Emma smiled, her nerves easing a little more. She had been so anxious when she first arrived, worried about making a good impression, but now, with Kevin, she felt a sense of peace she hadn't felt in a long time. As they continued walking, the conversation shifted again, this time to more personal topics. Emma found herself telling Kevin about her childhood, about her mother, and how she had always dreamed of doing something bigger with her life. I've always wanted to do something that mattered, she said, her voice soft but steady. I want to help people, but sometimes it feels like everything I do is just to get by. I work at the diner, pay my bills, but I never really feel like I'm making a difference. Kevin listened intently, nodding as she spoke. I think that's something a lot of people feel, he said. But you're already making a difference. Maybe it's not the big, dramatic stuff, but it's the small things. The kindness you show people, the way you help them even when you don't have to. Emma's chest tightened at his words, and for a moment, she felt a lump in her throat. She hadn't expected this kind of conversation to come from a man like Kevin, someone she had assumed would be all about business and success. But instead, he was listening to her, really listening. It was something she hadn't experienced in a long time. Thanks, she said, her voice quieter now. That means a lot. They walked in silence for a few more moments, the weight of the conversation hanging between them, but in a way that felt comforting, not heavy. As they reached a small park, Kevin stopped and turned to her. I'm glad we met tonight, he said, his tone sincere. Emma looked at him, feeling a flutter in her chest. Me too, she admitted. It was hard to put into words exactly what she was feeling, but she knew that this wasn't just another random encounter. There was something more, something that went beyond the circumstances that had brought them together. Kevin glanced up at the night sky, his expression thoughtful. I know this might sound strange, he said, his voice quiet. But I feel like I've known you for longer than just tonight. Like we were always supposed to meet. Emma felt a shiver run down her spine at his words. It was exactly how she had been feeling. I don't think it's strange, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I feel the same way. Kevin smiled, but there was a hint of sadness in his eyes that Emma couldn't quite place. I don't want this night to end, he said, his voice soft. Emma felt the same way, but she knew that all good things had to come to an end eventually. She didn't want to rush anything, but she also didn't want to let go of this moment. Maybe we don't have to let it end just yet, she said, surprising herself with her own words. Kevin's eyes lit up, and he took a small step closer to her. What do you mean? He asked, his voice filled with curiosity. Well, Emma began, her heart racing. We could grab a coffee or something. Just keep talking. Kevin chuckled, his smile widening. I'd like that. As they walked toward a nearby coffee shop, Emma couldn't help but feel like this was the beginning of something new. Something she hadn't expected, but something she was willing to explore. The night wasn't over yet, and neither were the possibilities. The night air was crisp as Emma and Kevin walked to the coffee shop, the sound of their footsteps echoing in the quiet street. It had been a whirlwind of an evening, one that neither of them had expected, yet both seemed to feel it deeply. There was something undeniable between them, something that went beyond chance or coincidence. As they entered the small, cozy coffee shop, the warmth hit them immediately, a stark contrast to the cool night outside. Emma noticed Kevin's subtle change in demeanor as they stood in line, his usual confident posture softening, as if the surroundings were making him more approachable. She couldn't help but wonder what he was thinking. Kevin glanced at her, his eyes holding a gentle curiosity. "I've never been much of a coffee shop guy," he admitted, looking around the shop, taking in the dim lights and the comforting smell of roasted beans. "I usually just grab a quick cup before heading into the office. But this place, it's different." Emma smiled, the irony not lost on her. "I've always loved it. There's something about the quiet, the simplicity, makes you feel like you can slow down for a moment." As they ordered their drinks, Emma realized how much she had come to appreciate Kevin's company. It wasn't just the pleasant conversation or the chemistry between them. It was the fact that he was open, real in a way that was rare in her life. The man she'd met tonight wasn't just the polished CEO she had imagined, but someone who could connect on a personal level, who understood what it meant to be vulnerable. They sat by the window, the city lights flickering outside, and for the first time that night, Emma allowed herself to be completely present. They sipped their coffee in a comfortable silence for a few moments, the sound of the occasional car passing by and the low hum of chatter around them the only things breaking the calm. Emma could feel the tension from earlier in the evening completely dissolve. There was no pressure here, no awkwardness, just the simple pleasure of each other's company. "I'm glad we decided to keep talking," Emma said, breaking the silence, her voice soft but sincere. Kevin met her gaze, his expression gentle. "So am I," he said, his voice warm. "I wasn't sure what to expect when we first met, but this feels real, more than I anticipated." Emma felt a flutter in her chest at his words. She wasn't sure what she had expected either, but this connection between them felt like something worth exploring. They continued talking, delving into deeper topics: family, dreams, regrets. Emma shared stories of growing up, the struggles of balancing school and work after her mother passed away, and how she'd always longed for more than what her life had given her. Kevin listened intently, his eyes not leaving hers as she spoke. When it was his turn, he told her a little about his own upbringing, though he remained vague on the details. He mentioned his parents briefly, how they had high expectations for him, always pushing him toward success, but he didn't go into much detail. There was a hint of sadness in his voice when he spoke about them, a feeling that wasn't lost on Emma. She could tell he had more to say, but he chose not to. She didn't press him. Instead, she let the conversation flow naturally, respecting the boundaries he had set without question. As the hours ticked by, the coffee shop began to empty out, and the soft hum of conversation quieted. Neither of them wanted to leave, but both knew the night was winding down. "It's getting late," Kevin said after checking his watch, a hint of reluctance in his tone. Emma nodded, feeling a small pang of disappointment. "Yeah," she said, her voice quieter now. "I guess it's time to call it a night." They stood up together, and for a moment, neither moved. Kevin hesitated, then reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. "I should probably get going," he said, his fingers lingering on the screen for a moment before he tucked the phone back in his pocket. "But I'd like to see you again soon." Emma felt a rush of warmth spread through her chest. She had been hoping he'd say that, but hearing it made her heart skip a beat. "I'd like that too," she replied, smiling. They walked out of the coffee shop together, the cool night air wrapping around them once again. Kevin seemed to be deep in thought, his expression thoughtful as they walked in silence. Emma wasn't sure what was going through his mind, but she could sense there was something more beneath the surface. When they reached the street corner, Kevin stopped and turned to her. "I don't know where this is going," he said, his voice quieter now, as if weighing his words carefully. "But I feel like there's something here, something real, and I don't want to ignore it." Emma's heart raced, her mind a blur of thoughts. She wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, She felt like she was exactly where she needed to be. "I feel the same," she said, her voice steady despite the flurry of emotions inside her. Kevin smiled softly, his eyes holding something deeper than she had seen before. "Then let's see where it goes," he said, his voice filled with quiet determination. As they exchanged a final smile, Emma felt a sense of hope she hadn't felt in years. This night, this moment, had been unexpected, and yet it felt like it was just the beginning of something new, something worth discovering. Together, they parted ways, but Emma couldn't shake the feeling that the connection they had started tonight would continue to grow with every step they took toward each other. The following week, Emma found herself walking into the same coffee shop where she had shared that unforgettable evening with Kevin. She had agreed to meet him again, a second date of sorts, though neither of them had explicitly called it that. They both knew there was something between them, a connection that neither could deny, even if the uncertainty of what it meant still loomed over them. As Emma walked through the door, she spotted Kevin almost immediately. He was sitting at their usual table by the window, his back straight, a slight frown on his face as he looked down at his phone. But when he saw her, his expression softened, and a warm smile spread across his face. It was like a switch had been flipped, and the tension in her chest that she hadn't even realized was there melted away. "Hey," Emma greeted him with a smile, walking up to the table. "You're early." Kevin chuckled, setting his phone down. "I couldn't wait to see you again," he said, standing up to greet her. Emma felt her heart flutter at his words, even though she tried to play it cool. "I don't know about you, but I've been looking forward to this all week," she admitted, slipping into the seat across from him. They both laughed, and for a moment, the world outside seemed to fade. It was just the two of them in their little bubble, a safe space away from the pressures of life. As they sat down, the conversation naturally flowed, just as it had during their first meeting. They spoke about their weeks. Emma talked about the busy shifts at the diner, and Kevin mentioned a new project he was working on. But the deeper, more meaningful topics they had explored the last time they saw each other were still present, lingering in the background. There was an unspoken understanding between them, a sense of comfort that Emma hadn't expected to feel so soon. "So," Kevin began after a moment, his eyes meeting hers with a hint of curiosity, "what's the one thing you've always wanted to do but haven't had the chance to?" Emma paused, taken aback by the question. It wasn't something she often thought about. She had spent so many years just getting by, focusing on surviving, that dreaming had taken a back seat. But with Kevin, she felt like she could open up, like her dreams didn't have to be so far out of reach. "I think about this sometimes," she said, her voice soft. "I've always wanted to have my own business, maybe a little shop or a café. Somewhere people can just be themselves, relax, and feel like they belong." Kevin listened intently, his gaze never wavering. "That sounds amazing," he said genuinely. "You'd be great at that. It's rare to find people who understand what it's like to feel out of place, to not belong, and yet still create a space where others feel welcome." Emma felt a lump in her throat at his words. She hadn't expected him to understand so deeply, to see her in a way that few people had. "Thanks," she said, a smile tugging at her lips. "I guess I've always wanted to give others what I never had." Kevin's eyes softened, and he leaned forward slightly. "I think the world needs more people like you," he said quietly. Emma couldn't help but feel a warmth spread through her chest at his words. It was the kind of praise she didn't often receive, and it felt different coming from him. It wasn't just flattery. It was sincere, thoughtful. They sat there for a few more minutes, just talking about their lives, their hopes, and even their fears. It was a conversation that felt natural, but also a little surreal, like the two of them were building something together, even if it was just a friendship, for now. Eventually, the coffee shop began to fill up with other customers, and the noise around them grew louder. Emma glanced at her watch and realized it was getting late. She didn't want the evening to end, but she also didn't want to overstay her welcome. "I should probably get going," she said reluctantly, standing up from the table. Kevin looked up at her, his expression serious. "I'm really glad we did this," he said, standing up as well. "I know we're just figuring things out, but I feel like we're heading in the right direction." Emma smiled softly. "Me too," she replied, her heart beating faster at the thought of what the future might hold. As they walked outside together, the night air was cool, but Emma didn't mind. She felt a sense of calm she hadn't felt in a long time. "I'll walk you to your car," Kevin offered, stepping closer to her. It's the least I can do. Emma nodded, not protesting. They walked side by side in comfortable silence, the sounds of the city around them now blending into the background. As they reached her car, Kevin turned to face her, his expression softer now. "I'll text you when I get home," he said, his tone light. "I don't want you to think I'm ignoring you or anything." Emma chuckled, feeling her nerves settle. "You don't have to explain," she said with a smile. "I understand." Kevin gave her a small smile in return before hesitating for a moment. He leaned in slightly, as if he was going to say something more, but then stopped himself. Instead, he simply said, "Good night, Emma. I'll see you soon." Emma felt a flutter in her chest as she watched him walk away. There was something about him that felt right, something about their connection that couldn't be ignored. She didn't know what the future would hold, but for the first time in a long time, she felt like she was on the brink of something new, something worth taking a chance on. The days following their coffee date felt like a dream to Emma. Every time her phone buzzed, she found herself hoping it was a message from Kevin, a small thrill running through her as she checked the screen. She had never expected to feel this way about someone, especially someone like him. Someone so different from her own world. Kevin had reached out the very next morning with a simple text, asking if she had made it home safely. That small gesture made her smile, and from then on, they exchanged messages regularly. They talked about everything, from their favorite books to their plans for the future. Emma started looking forward to those texts, and every conversation left her feeling more connected to him. It wasn't long before they made plans to meet again, this time for dinner. Emma chose a small, cozy Italian restaurant she had been to before. It wasn't fancy, but the food was always great, and the atmosphere felt more personal than the larger places Kevin was used to. As she walked into the restaurant that evening, she felt the familiar flutter in her chest. Kevin was already there, waiting for her. He stood up as soon as he saw her, his smile widening when he spotted her. "Hey," he greeted her warmly, his voice carrying a hint of excitement. "I was starting to think you weren't going to show up." Emma laughed, brushing her hair back from her face. "I wouldn't leave you hanging," she said, smiling. She could see the relief in his eyes, and it made her feel good, knowing she was wanted. They sat down at their table, and as they ordered, the conversation flowed easily between them. It was like they had known each other for years, even though it had only been a few weeks. Kevin shared more about his work, how demanding it could be at times, and the pressure he felt to always be on top of things. Emma listened intently, surprised by how much he was opening up to her. She had always imagined him to be the type of person who kept his emotions guarded, but here he was, sharing details of his life, and she couldn't help but appreciate it. "I think the hardest part is finding balance," he said, stirring his wine slowly. "I get so wrapped up in work that sometimes I forget to enjoy the little things. I forget to just be present." Emma nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. She had felt the same way many times in her own life. "I get it," she said, her voice soft. "It's easy to get caught up in the hustle and forget to take a step back. I've done that a lot." There was a moment of quiet as they both took in each other's words. It was rare to have someone understand the pressures of life in such a deep way. Emma appreciated that about Kevin. He wasn't just a polished, successful businessman. He was someone who understood the complexities of life, who had his own struggles, just like anyone else. As their dinner came to an end, Kevin paid the bill, insisting on treating her, despite Emma's protests. "I won't take no for an answer," he said with a playful smile, and Emma relented, amused by his persistence. They left the restaurant and walked along the streets of the city, the evening air cool and crisp. As they reached the park, Kevin stopped and turned to her, his expression more serious now. "I need to tell you something," he said quietly. Emma looked up at him, her heart beating a little faster. "What is it?" she asked, suddenly feeling a bit nervous. Kevin hesitated for a moment, his eyes searching hers, as if he were weighing his words carefully. "I know this might sound a little crazy," he began, "but I can't stop thinking about you. Ever since that night we met, I've felt, I don't know, like I've been waiting for this, for someone like you." Emma's breath caught in her throat. She hadn't expected him to say anything like this, and it left her speechless for a moment. "Kevin, she started, but he cut her off, taking a small step closer to her. "I know we're both figuring things out," he said quickly, "but I just wanted you to know that I really like you. A lot. And I want to see where this goes." Emma's heart was racing now, and she couldn't help but smile. She had been feeling the same way, but hearing him say it out loud made it all feel so much more real. I like you too, she said softly, her voice filled with sincerity. Kevin's smile widened, and he reached for her hand, his grip warm and reassuring. They stood there for a moment, their hands intertwined, the world around them fading away as they shared a quiet, meaningful connection. The city lights sparkled in the distance, but all Emma could focus on was Kevin and the way he made her feel. For the first time in a long time, she felt like everything was falling into place. It wasn't perfect, and there were still so many unknowns, but she was okay with that. She didn't need everything to be figured out right away. What mattered was that she was here, with him, and she was ready to see where this could go. I'm glad we're on the same page, Kevin said softly, his voice low and full of emotion. I don't want to rush anything, but I want to take this slow, get to know you more. I think there's something really special between us. Emma nodded, her heart swelling with warmth. I agree, she said, her voice steady. I think this is just the beginning. And for the first time in a long time, Emma allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, the future held something more than she had ever imagined. Over the next few weeks, Emma and Kevin continued to see each other, their bond deepening with each passing day. It was clear that something genuine was growing between them, but with every new step, Emma found herself wrestling with the quiet voice of doubt in the back of her mind. She had never been one to fall into relationships easily, especially not with someone as seemingly perfect as Kevin. As their connection grew stronger, the reality of their differences began to loom larger in her thoughts. He was successful, confident, and lived in a world that was so far removed from her own. She worked hard to make ends meet, struggling with bills and uncertainty. The contrast between their lives was undeniable. But despite these differences, something about Kevin made her feel like they could navigate through it. He made her feel seen, understood, and, most importantly, accepted. They had become inseparable, spending time together whenever they could. Sometimes, they would grab a coffee at the same shop where they first met, talking about their lives, their dreams, and their plans. Other times, they would simply take long walks around the city, enjoying the quiet moments that felt like their own. One evening, as they sat at a small bistro near the park, Kevin looked at her across the table, his eyes filled with sincerity. I've been thinking a lot about us, he said, his voice steady, but with an undertone of something deeper. Emma felt a flutter of nerves in her stomach. She knew what was coming. She had sensed it for a while. And what have you been thinking? She asked, trying to keep her voice calm. Kevin took a deep breath, leaning slightly forward. I know this might sound a little soon, but I feel like we've built something really special. I want to take the next step, Emma. I want to be with you, truly. No games, no pretenses. Emma's heart skipped a beat. She had been feeling the same way, but wasn't sure if she was ready to voice it, afraid of what it might mean for them. I feel the same, she admitted, her voice soft. I've been thinking a lot about us too. She paused, looking down at her hands, her fingers fidgeting with the edge of her napkin. But sometimes, I wonder if we're living in different worlds. Kevin reached across the table, gently placing his hand over hers, and she looked up, meeting his eyes. I get it, he said quietly. But I don't want that to stop us. Yes, we come from different places, but what matters is that we're here, right now, and I'm not going anywhere. We'll figure it out together. Emma felt a rush of warmth at his words, but the nagging voice in her head persisted. What if he was just saying that because he was caught up in the moment? What if, when the novelty wore off, the differences between them would become too much to handle? But then she remembered all the times they had spent together, all the small moments of connection that had made her feel like she was truly seen. Maybe this was worth the risk. Maybe they were worth the risk. I don't want to lose this, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't want to lose you. Kevin's smile was soft, reassuring. You won't, he said simply. We'll take it one day at a time. The rest of the evening passed in a blur, with Emma feeling like a weight had been lifted off her chest. She didn't have all the answers, and neither did Kevin, but for the first time, she felt like they were in this together. As they left the bistro and walked back toward the park, hand in hand, Emma allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, their differences didn't have to define them. She didn't know what the future would hold, but she was starting to feel that it didn't matter as much as she had once thought. What mattered now was the connection they had, the bond that had formed so effortlessly between them. They didn't need to have it all figured out. They just needed to keep moving forward, together. The next few weeks passed quickly, with their relationship growing stronger. They spent more time at Kevin's apartment, where Emma felt more and more comfortable, though still aware of the differences between them. Kevin's world was a fast-paced one, full of meetings and deadlines, while Emma's was slower, simpler, rooted in the everyday struggles of making ends meet. Yet, despite these contrasts, they made it work. Kevin began to understand the pressures Emma faced in her daily life, and Emma started to see the weight of the responsibilities Kevin carried in his. There were moments when the stress of their different worlds threatened to pull them apart, but each time, they found a way to reconnect. It was in those quiet moments, when they were alone together, that Emma realized how much she had come to depend on Kevin. He wasn't just a person she enjoyed spending time with. He was someone who made her feel like she mattered. As the weeks turned into months, Emma found herself opening up more and more, not just to Kevin, but to the possibilities of the future. She started to believe in herself again, in her dreams, and in the idea that maybe she didn't have to settle for just getting by. Maybe she could have more. Maybe they could have more. One evening, as they sat together on Kevin's balcony, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and orange, Kevin turned to her, his eyes filled with quiet intensity. "I've been thinking," he began, his voice steady but carrying an underlying sense of purpose. "About us, about everything." Emma looked at him, her heart racing. "What about us?" she asked, her voice soft but eager. Kevin took a deep breath. "I think we're ready for the next step," he said simply. Emma's heart skipped a beat as she tried to process what he was saying. She wasn't sure if she was ready, but at the same time, she couldn't deny that she had always hoped this moment would come. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Kevin smiled, a tender look in his eyes. I think it's time to make this official. To stop dancing around it, and take a leap of faith. I want to be with you, Emma. For real." Emma felt a surge of emotion at his words, and for the first time in a long time, she realized that this was the moment she had been waiting for. She didn't need all the answers, but she was ready to take that leap with him. She smiled, her heart full of hope. "I'm ready," she said softly. "I'm ready to take that leap with you." And with that, they sealed their future with a promise, one that felt as real as the sunset stretching out before them. Weeks passed, and Emma and Kevin's relationship continued to evolve. They had taken the leap together, and now it felt like their worlds were slowly starting to merge. Despite the initial hesitation Emma had felt about the differences between their lives, she found that those differences weren't as daunting as she had imagined. Kevin had introduced her to his world, the fast-paced, high-pressure environment of his work, and in return, she had shared her own world with him. The small moments of triumph and struggle that came with working long hours at the diner and managing the day-to-day challenges of life. What surprised her most was how easily they navigated those differences. They had developed a rhythm together, a balance that allowed them to grow closer with each passing day. Kevin was no longer just the man with the fancy job and the polished appearance. He had become someone who genuinely cared about her and understood her in ways she hadn't thought possible. And Emma? She had grown in ways she hadn't expected. Her confidence was building, and for the first time in a long while, she started to believe in the possibility of a better future for herself. She started taking steps toward her dreams, talking to people about starting her own business, and even looking into affordable courses to learn more about what it would take to open a café or a small shop, just like she had always wanted. It was all small steps, but they were significant ones. One evening, after a particularly long day at work, Emma met Kevin at a small rooftop bar they had visited once before. The warm summer breeze greeted them as she climbed the stairs to the rooftop, and when she saw Kevin standing by the edge, looking out over the city, her heart skipped a beat. He looked so at ease, his usual sharp focus softened in the twilight. "Hey," Emma said, walking over to him. "Beautiful night, huh?" Kevin turned toward her and smiled. "Yeah, it's perfect," he replied, his gaze lingering on her for a moment before he looked back out at the city. "I've been thinking about something," he added after a moment. Emma raised an eyebrow, curious. "What's that?" "I've been thinking about us," he said, his voice serious, but not heavy. "How far we've come, how much we've both changed since we first met." Emma smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. "I've been thinking the same thing," she admitted. "I didn't expect to feel this connected to you. I didn't expect any of this." Kevin looked at her, his expression soft. Neither did I, he said quietly. But now that we're here, I can't imagine my life without you in it. Emma felt a rush of emotions, the depth of his words hitting her harder than she expected. She had always been cautious, afraid to give too much of herself to someone, but with Kevin, it felt different. She felt safe, seen, and truly appreciated. As they talked into the night, sharing their hopes for the future and their plans for the months ahead, Emma began to realize something. She had been afraid of stepping into a life that seemed out of her reach, a life with Kevin that might be full of new challenges and uncertainties. But the more they shared, the more she realized that they were building something real, something that wasn't about perfection but about understanding and support. Over the next few weeks, Emma took bold steps toward her dreams. She enrolled in a few business courses, began meeting with people who had experience in the café business, and even started saving money toward her goal. Kevin supported her every step of the way, offering advice and encouragement when needed, but also giving her the space to grow on her own. He never pushed her to move faster than she was comfortable with, and that made all the difference. One Saturday afternoon, after a particularly long week at the diner, Kevin surprised Emma by picking her up and driving her to a small, quiet park on the outskirts of the city. They hadn't been to this part of town before, and Emma couldn't help but wonder what he had planned. As they walked through the park, Kevin was unusually quiet, his hand gently holding hers as they strolled along the winding path. After a few minutes, they reached a small, peaceful lake, the water shimmering in the afternoon light. Kevin stopped and turned to face her, his expression serious. I know we've talked a lot about the future and about what we both want, he began, his voice steady. But there's something I want to say. Emma felt a flicker of nervousness, wondering what he was about to say. She had a feeling that whatever it was important. What is it? She asked, her heart beating a little faster. Kevin took a deep breath before speaking again. I've been thinking a lot about us. About how much you've changed my life for the better. I know we've had our ups and downs, and I know there's still a lot we have to figure out, but I want you to know that I'm all in. I'm here for you, no matter what. Emma felt her heart swell at his words, and she smiled up at him, feeling a tear slip down her cheek. Kevin, I feel the same way, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. I'm all in, too. Kevin's eyes softened, and he reached out to wipe away the tear. I'm so glad to hear that, he said quietly, because I can't imagine my life without you in it. Emma felt a sense of peace wash over her, knowing that they were on the same page. This was real. This was something worth fighting for. Together, they had built a connection that neither of them had expected, but it was stronger than anything either of them had ever known. As they stood by the lake, their hands intertwined, Emma knew that the journey ahead would have its challenges. But with Kevin by her side, she felt like she could face anything. For the first time in a long time, she felt ready to embrace whatever the future held. As the weeks passed, Emma and Kevin's relationship continued to flourish, becoming more solid with each shared moment. They had made it through the initial phase of getting to know each other, and now, it was about navigating life together, learning about each other's rhythms, and merging their worlds even further. Emma was growing more confident in herself, but she was also becoming more aware of the differences between them, the world she came from and the one Kevin lived in. It wasn't something she thought about constantly, but every so often, it would pop into her mind. His world of luxury, high-profile business meetings, and the type of people he interacted with. And then there was her world, a world filled with work shifts at the diner, small victories, and tight budgets. She couldn't help but wonder if one day, these differences might pull them apart. Kevin was aware of this too. He had seen the way she sometimes hesitated or seemed unsure when they talked about their future. But every time it came up, he reassured her. It doesn't matter where we come from, Emma. What matters is where we're going together. He had said that on more than one occasion, and Emma found comfort in his words, even if she still had lingering doubts. One evening, as they were enjoying a quiet dinner together at his apartment, Kevin brought up the topic of their future again. This time, Emma felt more open to discussing it, realizing that she couldn't keep pushing her concerns aside. Kevin, she began, her voice softer than usual, I know we've talked about the future, but I don't want to make any assumptions. I don't want to wake up one day and realize we've drifted apart because of things we didn't talk about. Kevin looked at her, his expression thoughtful, and reached for her hand. Emma, listen to me, he said, his voice steady. I don't want you to feel like there's any pressure. I'm not asking you to be anything other than yourself. I just want you to know that I'm here for you, no matter what. She looked into his eyes, feeling the sincerity in his words. But sometimes I wonder if we're living in two different worlds, she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't want you to think I can just fit into the life you've built. It's not that I don't want to be with you, because I do, more than anything. But I can't ignore the reality of our different worlds. Kevin squeezed her hand gently, his thumb tracing small circles on her skin. I understand, Emma. I do, he said softly. But I don't think it's about fitting into each other's worlds. I think it's about making our own world together. We don't need to change who we are to make this work. We just need to support each other. And I want to be the person who's there for you, no matter what. Emma's heart swelled at his words, and for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, their different worlds didn't matter as much as she thought. They both had their own struggles, their own challenges, but together, they made something stronger than the sum of their parts. The evening stretched on, filled with the warmth of their conversation. They spoke about their hopes, their plans, and the future they both wanted to build. Kevin talked about the projects he was working on, and Emma shared more about her dreams of opening her own café, how she had started taking steps to learn more about the business side of things. She didn't know if she would ever get there, but just taking those small steps gave her a sense of purpose. Kevin encouraged her every chance he got, never making her feel like her dream was too small or too far out of reach. As the night wore on, Emma began to feel a sense of peace she hadn't felt in a long time. She had spent so much of her life doubting herself, wondering if she could ever reach the kind of life she dreamed of. But with Kevin by her side, she felt like anything was possible. The following weekend, Kevin surprised Emma by taking her to a new spot in the city, a small art gallery he had been meaning to visit. I know you love art, and I thought we could spend the day here, he said with a grin, his hand tucked into the small of her back as they walked through the gallery. Emma was touched by the gesture, but also a little surprised. Kevin had always been the type to enjoy fine dining and exclusive events, but this was something different. This was a world that felt more like hers, one she could relate to. As they walked through the gallery, they talked about the paintings, the stories behind each piece, and what they thought they meant. It was a refreshing change of pace, and Emma felt more and more at ease as the day went on. I love this, she admitted, her voice filled with genuine appreciation. I didn't think you'd enjoy this kind of thing. Kevin laughed softly. I'm enjoying it more than I thought, he admitted. Sometimes, you just have to slow down and take in the little things. It's easy to get lost in the rush, but moments like this make me realize that there's more to life than just work and deadlines. Emma smiled, her heart swelling with affection. She had always appreciated the simple moments in life, but hearing Kevin acknowledge them made her realize just how much he had come to understand her. As they left the gallery, Kevin took her hand and pulled her close, his voice low and sincere. I want you to know, Emma, he said. No matter what happens, I'm always going to be here for you. I want to see you succeed in everything you do. Emma felt a tear slip down her cheek, overwhelmed by the depth of his words. She had never had someone believe in her the way Kevin did, and it was more than she could have ever imagined. I'm ready to believe in myself too, she said, her voice shaky but full of conviction. And I'm ready to take this leap with you, wherever it leads. Kevin smiled, wiping away her tear gently with his thumb. We'll take it together, he said softly, kissing her forehead. And in that moment, Emma knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, stronger, united, and ready for whatever the future held. As the months passed, Emma and Kevin's relationship continued to strengthen. They had learned to navigate the challenges of their different worlds, with Emma growing more confident in her ability to create a future that was all her own. She had taken steps toward her dream of opening a small cafe, attending business seminars, and even shadowing a few local entrepreneurs. Kevin had supported her every step of the way, never once doubting her or pushing her to move faster than she was comfortable with. He celebrated her progress and cheered her on, always there with a word of encouragement when she needed it most. But despite everything going well, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change. It wasn't that she didn't trust Kevin. She did, more than anyone. It was just the way life had a habit of throwing curveballs, and sometimes she couldn't help but feel like one was coming. One afternoon, as they were sitting in a park together, enjoying the rare calm of the weekend, Kevin seemed quieter than usual. He had his arm around her shoulders, and though he smiled when she glanced up at him, there was a distant look in his eyes. Emma noticed, but didn't say anything at first, unsure if she was reading too much into it. "Is everything okay?" she finally asked, her voice soft, almost hesitant. Kevin turned to her, his smile widening slightly, though there was a flicker of concern in his eyes. "Yeah, everything's fine," he said, his voice betraying a hint of uncertainty. "Just thinking about some things." Emma raised an eyebrow. "What things?" she asked gently, wanting to understand, wanting to be there for him the way he had been there for her. Kevin paused for a moment, as if weighing how much he should share. He looked out at the park, watching a couple walk by, holding hands. "I've been offered a new position at work," he said slowly. "A promotion, actually. It's a big opportunity, and it would mean more responsibility, more time, and a lot more travel." Emma's heart sank slightly, unsure of where this was heading. She had known that Kevin's job was demanding, but this was different. A promotion meant more of everything. More work, more time away, more sacrifices. Kevin turned to face her fully now, his expression serious. "I've been thinking a lot about it, and I'm not sure how it's going to affect us. It's a big step, and I don't want to make decisions that could pull me away from you, from us." Emma felt a knot tighten in her stomach. "I don't want to hold you back," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "If this is something you want to do, something that could help your career, I would never stop you." Kevin shook his head quickly, his hand gently squeezing hers. "It's not about that," he said firmly. "I want to do what's best for us, not just for my career. But I also know that if I take this job, things are going to change. And I need to know that we can handle it." Emma took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his words. She had always known that their relationship wouldn't be without its challenges, but this felt different. This was the kind of change that could alter everything. She wanted to be supportive of Kevin, but she also needed to make sure that she wasn't losing herself in the process. "I want to make this work," she said, her voice steady now. "But I need to know that we can find a balance. I don't want to lose what we have, Kevin. I don't want us to drift apart because of something we didn't talk about." Kevin nodded, looking deeply into her eyes. "I don't want that either. I don't want you to ever feel like you're second place to my job." Emma smiled softly, feeling a sense of relief wash over her. "Then we'll figure it out together," she said, squeezing his hand. "We've already made it this far." Kevin smiled back, his eyes warm and full of gratitude. "I'm glad we're on the same page," he said, his voice filled with sincerity. They sat together for a while, the conversation shifting back to lighter topics. They spoke about their plans for the upcoming holidays and joked about the things they wanted to do together. The tension that had filled the air earlier seemed to dissipate, leaving behind a sense of calm and understanding. As they parted ways that evening, Kevin kissed her forehead, promising to keep her in the loop about his decision. Emma felt hopeful, despite the uncertainty. She knew that whatever came next, they would face it together. The following week, Kevin made his decision. He accepted the promotion, but with one condition. He would only take it if he could find a way to balance his work and personal life. He made it clear to his company that he wanted to be present in his relationship with Emma, and he wasn't willing to sacrifice that. Emma was proud of him for standing his ground, for taking control of his future in a way that made room for the things that mattered most. Over the next few months, Kevin's new role did bring more challenges, more travel, and more late nights. But he made a point to be there for Emma, supporting her as she continued to build her dream. They both worked hard to maintain their connection, to make time for each other no matter how hectic their schedules became. It wasn't always easy, but they never stopped trying. One evening, after a particularly long day, Kevin came home to find Emma waiting for him with a smile and a home-cooked meal. As they sat together at the table, Kevin looked across at her, his heart swelling with love. "I don't know how we do it," he said, his voice filled with admiration. "But I'm so grateful for you, Emma. For everything you've taught me, for how much you believe in us." Emma smiled, reaching across the table to take his hand. "We do it together," she said softly, squeezing his hand. "And that's all that matters." And in that moment, as they shared a quiet dinner together, Emma knew that no matter where life took them, they would always find a way to make it work. Their love wasn't about perfection. It was about making the choice to stand by each other, to fight for each other, every single day. As time went on, Emma and Kevin settled into a rhythm that felt more like home. Despite the challenges they faced, both with their individual careers and the complexities of balancing their relationship with the demands of life, they made it work. Kevin's new job continued to keep him busy, with more travel and long hours, but he never stopped making time for Emma. They had developed a routine that allowed them both to chase their dreams while still nurturing the connection they shared. For Emma, it was a delicate balance. She had grown more confident in her entrepreneurial pursuits, but there were days when doubt crept in. Opening her own cafe was a dream that felt within reach, but the journey had its bumps. She had faced setbacks along the way, financing issues, permits, and the challenge of competing in a saturated market. There were moments when she wondered if it was all worth it, if her dream was too far out of reach. But each time she felt unsure, Kevin was there, steady as ever. He encouraged her, reminding her that she had already come so far. "You've got this, Emma," he would say, his voice full of conviction. "You've been working for this for so long, and I believe in you." His support gave her the strength to keep pushing forward, and slowly, the pieces of her dream started to come together. But it wasn't just about business. It was about them, about their future together. As Emma's dream began to take shape, she realized how much Kevin's unwavering support meant to her. He wasn't just helping her with her business goals. He was helping her build a life that was hers, one where she didn't have to compromise her values or her passions. She started to see that their relationship was rooted in something deeper than just shared moments. It was about growing together, lifting each other up, and supporting each other's ambitions. As she prepared to sign a lease for her first cafe location, Kevin came home one evening with a look on his face that Emma couldn't quite read. "What's going on?" she asked, sensing the change in his demeanor. He sat down next to her, taking her hand. "I have something important to tell you," he began, his voice a little more serious than usual. "I've been offered a promotion, an even bigger role in the company, but this one requires a significant move. It's a great opportunity for my career, but it means relocating, probably to another city." Emma felt her heart skip a beat. The thought of Kevin moving away was something she had never considered. She had always known his work required a lot of travel, but this was different. This was real change, a potential shift in their lives that neither of them had planned for. "So, what does this mean for us?" she asked quietly, trying to keep her voice steady. Kevin took a deep breath, his eyes searching hers. "I don't want to make any decisions without you. This opportunity would be a huge step forward for me, but it would also mean we'd have to make a decision about where we live, what our future looks like. I want to be with you, Emma. I want to build a life with you, but I don't know what this move means for us." Emma felt a mixture of emotions swirl inside her. She had never imagined that a new chapter for Kevin would mean they might be forced to face such a big decision. She thought of the cafe she was about to open, the plan she had worked so hard for, and the life they had slowly built together. "I don't want to stand in the way of your career," she said after a long pause. "I've always known you would have amazing opportunities, but I also don't want to give up everything I've worked for." Kevin nodded, his expression softening. "I don't want you to have to choose between your dreams and mine. I've been thinking about it a lot, and I want to be with you, but I also don't want to take you away from everything you've worked for." The weight of the situation hung between them, and for a moment, Emma wasn't sure what to say. The future felt uncertain, and it was hard to see a clear path forward. But then Kevin spoke again, his voice filled with conviction. "I know it's a lot to think about, but I want us to make this decision together. Whatever we choose as a team." Emma looked at him, feeling the sincerity in his words. She had always known that their relationship wasn't going to be easy, that love alone wouldn't be enough to overcome the challenges they faced. But in that moment, she realized that the most important thing was their commitment to each other. "I'm willing to consider anything," Emma said, her voice steady. "I don't want to lose what we have, but I also want to continue building the life I've started." Kevin smiled, relief washing over his face. "We'll figure it out," he said. "We'll find a way to make it work, no matter where we are. Because I want to be with you. And I know we can make anything work if we do it together." Over the next few weeks, Emma and Kevin spent countless hours discussing their options. Kevin continued with his work, while Emma finalized the details of her cafe. They didn't rush the decision. Instead, they focused on what was most important to them, their relationship, their dreams, and the future they both wanted to create together. Eventually, They found a solution that worked for both of them. Kevin would take the promotion, but with the understanding that he would make time to be with Emma as they both pursued their individual dreams. The decision wasn't easy, but it felt right. They were both willing to adapt, to change, and to grow in ways that would allow them to keep building a life together. As they stood side by side, watching the sunset one evening, Emma realized that no matter what the future held, they had something stronger than any obstacle: each other. And in that moment, she knew that with Kevin by her side, they could handle anything that came their way. As the weeks passed, Emma and Kevin settled into their new rhythm. The decision they had made together, Kevin accepting the promotion while continuing to nurture their relationship, had given both of them a sense of stability. Emma had learned to embrace the changes in their dynamic, and Kevin, though busier than ever, had become even more committed to making time for her. He was determined to make their relationship work, no matter how demanding his new role became. Emma had also made significant strides in her journey toward opening her café. She had secured the location and signed the lease, and now it was time to turn her dream into a reality. She was excited but also nervous. There were so many details to handle, so many decisions to make, and at times, the weight of it all felt overwhelming. But each time she doubted herself, Kevin was there, encouraging her, reminding her of the progress she had made and how far she had come. He often stopped by the cafe site, offering his support and sometimes even helping with the little things, like holding the blueprint while she discussed plans with contractors or bringing coffee when she was buried in paperwork. His unwavering support made the daunting task of starting her business feel less intimidating. It wasn't just his support at work that made a difference. It was the way he showed up for her in their personal life, too. He made sure to keep their weekends free, planning outings that allowed them to escape the pressures of their busy lives. Sometimes they went hiking in the nearby hills. Other times they explored small towns on the outskirts of the city. These moments, away from the chaos of their daily routines, helped Emma recharge and reminded her why she was working so hard. One Saturday evening, after a long week of work and planning, Emma and Kevin found themselves sitting in a cozy restaurant, enjoying a quiet dinner. Kevin had surprised her with reservations at a place they had wanted to try for a while, and she was grateful for the gesture. As they shared a bottle of wine, they talked about everything, about the cafe, about Kevin's new role, about their dreams and fears. "You know, I've been thinking a lot about what we talked about a few weeks ago," Kevin said, his voice thoughtful as he set his glass down. "About the balance between our work and our relationship." Emma looked at him, curious. "What about it?" she asked. Kevin smiled softly, his eyes meeting hers. "I think we've done a good job of making it work, but I want to make sure we don't lose sight of what really matters. I don't want us to get so caught up in our individual goals that we forget to enjoy the time we have together." Emma's heart swelled at his words. She had been so focused on her goals lately, on making her dream a reality, that sometimes she forgot to pause and appreciate the present. "I agree," she said, her voice sincere. "It's easy to get lost in everything, to forget to just be with each other." Kevin reached across the table, taking her hand in his. "We've been through a lot, and I know we're both chasing big dreams. But I want you to know, Emma, that no matter what, you're my priority. I'm here for you, for us, and I'll always make time for you." Emma smiled, her eyes filling with emotion. She had never expected this level of commitment from anyone. Kevin's words meant more to her than she could express. "I'm here for you too," she said softly. "I don't want us to lose sight of what we have either." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of their conversation hanging in the air, but in a way that felt reassuring rather than heavy. They didn't have all the answers, but they knew that together, they could face whatever came their way. After dinner, they walked hand in hand through the streets of the city, the night air cool and refreshing. Kevin pulled her close, wrapping his arm around her shoulders as they strolled. "You know," he said, his voice light, "I've been thinking about something else too." Emma looked up at him, intrigued. "What's that?" she asked, her heart still full from their earlier conversation. Kevin grinned, his eyes twinkling. "I think it's time we take a vacation. Just the two of us. A real getaway. Somewhere quiet. No work, no stress." Emma's face lit up. "That sounds perfect," she said, excitement bubbling inside her. "Where do you have in mind?" Kevin shrugged playfully. "I was thinking somewhere peaceful, maybe a cabin by the lake or a small beach town." just enough to recharge. Emma grinned, the idea sounding like the perfect escape from the whirlwind of their lives. "I'm in," she said, feeling the weight of the world lift off her shoulders just thinking about it. It wasn't just the getaway that excited her. It was the promise of time spent with Kevin, away from the pressures of work and life. "Let's do it," she added, her voice filled with anticipation. Over the next few weeks, they planned their trip, choosing a small coastal town that was known for its quiet charm and scenic views. As the day of their departure approached, Emma felt a sense of peace she hadn't felt in a long time. She had spent so much time focused on building her future, on making sure everything was in place, that she had forgotten to enjoy the present moment. The trip with Kevin felt like the perfect opportunity to reset, to remind herself of the importance of balance. When they finally arrived at the beach, Emma felt an overwhelming sense of calm wash over her. The sound of the waves crashing against the shore, the salty air, the peacefulness of the town, it was everything they had both needed. They spent the days exploring the area, taking long walks along the beach, enjoying quiet dinners, and simply being in each other's company. It was everything they had hoped for and more. As they sat on the beach one evening, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink, Kevin turned to Emma, his voice soft. "I'm so glad we did this," he said, his hand resting on hers. "I feel like we're exactly where we need to be." Emma smiled, feeling the weight of his words sink in. "Me too," she said, her heart full. "This is perfect." And in that moment, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Emma realized that this was what mattered most. Being present, being together, and making time for the things that truly made life worth living. The peaceful getaway was exactly what Emma and Kevin had needed. The days spent in the coastal town were filled with simplicity and relaxation. They had long walks on the beach, quiet dinners at small seaside restaurants, and mornings spent reading together in the cozy cabin they had rented. It was the kind of time that allowed them both to disconnect from the demands of their busy lives and simply be with each other. It was clear that their connection had only deepened during this time, and Emma found herself feeling more grounded than she had in a long while. On their last night at the beach, as they sat on the porch of the cabin, watching the waves crash against the shore, Kevin turned to Emma, his expression thoughtful. "You know," he began, his voice soft, "I've been thinking about something. About everything we've been through together and how far we've come." Emma looked at him, her heart swelling with affection. She had always appreciated how Kevin could be so introspective, always considering not just the present, but the future too. "What about it?" she asked, her voice gentle. Kevin smiled slightly, but there was a hint of seriousness in his gaze. "I think it's time we start making more concrete plans. I've been thinking about our future, about where we want to go, not just with our careers, but with our life together." Emma's heart skipped a beat. She had always known they had a future together, but hearing Kevin say it out loud made it feel even more real. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Kevin reached out and took her hand, his fingers warm against hers. "I know we've both been focused on our individual goals, but I want to make sure we're building something together," he said, his eyes searching hers. "I don't just want to be together for the short term, Emma. I want to see you succeed with your café, and I want to be there with you every step of the way. And I want us to have a life where we're both happy, not just individually, but as a team." Emma felt a wave of emotion flood through her. She had always dreamed of building something meaningful in her life, but she had never expected it to be with someone like Kevin. Someone who believed in her so completely, someone who made her feel like her dreams were just as important as his. "I want that too," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I want us to have a future where we both succeed, and we do it together." Kevin smiled, his eyes soft and full of affection. "We will," he said quietly, squeezing her hand. "We'll figure it out. We just need to keep communicating and keep supporting each other." Emma nodded, a sense of peace settling over her. She realized that, while the future might be uncertain in many ways, she knew that they could face it together. As they sat there, watching the sun set over the ocean, Emma allowed herself to imagine the possibilities of their future, of the life they would build, both personally and professionally. She imagined opening her cafe, with Kevin by her side, supporting her every step of the way. She imagined them balancing their careers, their dreams, and their love. It wasn't going to be easy. There would be challenges, moments of doubt, and times when they would have to make difficult decisions. But Emma knew that, with Kevin, they could face anything. The next day, they packed up their things and left the beach, but the sense of calm and clarity they had found there stayed with them. As they drove back to the city, Emma felt a renewed sense of purpose. She had always known that she wanted more than just a job or a paycheck. She wanted to create something meaningful, something that would make a difference. And now, with Kevin's unwavering support, she felt more confident than ever that she could make it happen. Back in the city, things started moving quickly. Emma finalized her plans for the cafe, secured the remaining funding she needed, and began hiring staff. Kevin continued to support her, attending meetings with contractors and offering advice when needed, but he also made sure to take time for their relationship. They had started a new chapter, one where they both prioritized their dreams, but also made space for each other. As the cafe's opening day drew closer, Emma couldn't help but feel a mixture of excitement and nervousness. It was a big step, and there were still so many unknowns. But every time she doubted herself, she thought back to the conversations she and Kevin had shared, to the moments when he told her how much he believed in her. Those words gave her the strength to keep going. The opening day finally arrived, and as Emma stood in the cafe, watching people come through the door, she felt a rush of pride. It wasn't perfect, there were still small things to work out, but it was hers, and that was all that mattered. Kevin was by her side, as always, cheering her on. He had taken the day off to be there for her, and seeing him in the crowd, smiling and proud, filled Emma's heart with gratitude. That evening, after a successful first day, Kevin took Emma out to dinner to celebrate. As they sat together, sharing a quiet meal, Emma looked at him and smiled. "I couldn't have done this without you," she said, her voice filled with emotion. Kevin reached across the table, taking her hand in his. "You did it, Emma. I just helped you believe you could." Emma's smile widened, her heart full. "And I'll keep believing, because I know you believe in me." Kevin smiled back, his eyes soft. "I'll always believe in you." As they finished their meal, Emma felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for the life they were building together. She knew there would be challenges ahead, but with Kevin by her side, she felt like they could face anything. And as they walked out of the restaurant, hand in hand, Emma realized that this was just the beginning. There was so much more ahead for them, and whatever came next, they would face it together. Months passed, and Emma's cafe was slowly becoming a beloved spot in the community. Each day brought new challenges and triumphs, but Emma was thriving. She had built the business from the ground up, and now she was watching it grow in ways she had only dreamed of. The cafe had become her sanctuary, a place where she could pour her heart and soul into something that was hers. Kevin continued to be her biggest supporter, visiting the cafe as often as he could, helping with whatever was needed, whether it was offering business advice, meeting clients, or simply showing up to cheer her on. His belief in her never wavered, and that unwavering support was the foundation that allowed her to keep going even when things got tough. As Emma settled into her new role as a small business owner, she began to realize that the balance between work and life that she and Kevin had been working toward was starting to pay off. They had found a rhythm, an understanding of each other's needs, dreams, and challenges. Kevin's work still required a lot of travel, but he made it a priority to be home when it mattered most. They had learned to adapt to the ebbs and flows of life, knowing that their connection was strong enough to withstand whatever came their way. One evening, after a long day at the cafe, Emma met Kevin for dinner at a new restaurant in town. She was tired, but as soon as she saw him walk through the door, her heart lifted. He greeted her with a warm smile and a hug, and they sat down to enjoy their meal. As they chatted about their day, Emma couldn't help but feel grateful for the life they had built together. She looked at Kevin, her thoughts swirling. "You know," she began, her voice thoughtful, "I've been thinking a lot lately about how much has changed in the past year. It feels like so much has happened, and yet, it feels like we're just getting started." Kevin looked at her, his expression soft. "I know what you mean," he said, his voice steady. "When I think back to when we first met, I never could have imagined everything we've done together. But now, it feels like we're exactly where we're supposed to be." Emma smiled, her heart full. "I never could have imagined this life for myself either," she said softly. "But here we are, and I think we've built something really special." Kevin reached across the table and took her hand in his touch warm and comforting. "I couldn't agree more," he said, his eyes sincere. and I want to keep building with you. I know we've had our share of challenges, but I truly believe that we're stronger because of them. We've learned, grown, and supported each other through it all." Emma nodded, feeling the weight of his words. She had always been independent, but in Kevin, she had found someone who not only supported her, but believed in her. His faith in her, in them, was something she had never known before. "I feel the same way," she said quietly. "And I'm so grateful for you, Kevin. For everything you've done for me, for us." Kevin smiled, his thumb gently brushing over her hand. "You don't have to thank me, Emma. I'm just doing what comes naturally. I want to be with you, through everything. And I always will be." Their conversation drifted to their future, to the dreams they still had, both individually and as a couple. Kevin had recently started thinking about expanding his role within the company, and Emma had a few ideas for growing the cafe and possibly opening more locations in the future. They talked about their ambitions, but also about what really mattered, their time together, the love they shared, and the way they had built a life that was fulfilling in every sense. After dinner, they decided to take a walk around the city, the night air cool and refreshing. The streets were quiet, and they strolled side by side, hand in hand, enjoying the peacefulness of the moment. As they walked, Kevin paused and turned to her, his expression serious but filled with tenderness. "I've been thinking a lot about us," he said softly, "about how far we've come and where we're going. And I know we've talked about the future, but I want to make sure we're always on the same page." Emma looked at him, a mixture of curiosity and warmth in her eyes. "What do you mean?" she asked. Kevin took a deep breath before speaking again. "I've been thinking about how we balance everything. Work, life, our relationship. And I want to make sure we keep prioritizing each other, no matter what. Because I want to keep building this life with you, Emma. And I want us to always be moving forward, together." Emma felt a lump form in her throat at his words. She had always known that their relationship was something special, but hearing Kevin express his commitment so openly, so wholeheartedly, made her heart swell with emotion. She squeezed his hand, looking up at him. "I want that too," she said, her voice steady but filled with love. "I want to keep moving forward with you, no matter what comes next." Kevin smiled, his eyes lighting up with the same warmth she had come to love so much. "Then we will," he said, his voice filled with certainty. Together, they continued their walk, the city lights twinkling in the distance as they talked about their future, about the possibilities that lay ahead. Emma felt a sense of peace she hadn't realized she was missing, knowing that whatever challenges they might face, they would face them together. As they reached the park near their apartment, they paused to look out over the city. The soft sound of the night was a gentle reminder of how far they had come. "I think this is just the beginning," Emma said quietly, her voice filled with hope. Kevin nodded, pulling her close. "I think so too," he replied, kissing her forehead softly. And in that moment, Emma knew that no matter what the future held, with Kevin by her side, she was ready to take it on. Together. As the seasons changed, so did Emma and Kevin's lives. But through it all, their bond remained steady and strong. Emma's cafe continued to grow, and with it, so did her confidence. She had weathered the challenges of being a new business owner, navigating financial hurdles, managing employees, and ensuring that the quality of her product never faltered. She was proud of how far she had come, but there were still so many dreams left to fulfill. One of the biggest dreams was to expand her cafe business. She had always known that her vision was bigger than just one location, and now, after months of hard work and steady progress, she was finally ready to take that next step. She had been looking into different locations for a second cafe, but the decision was daunting. She knew it wouldn't be easy, and there was always the fear of failure that lingered in the back of her mind. Kevin, as always, was by her side, offering encouragement and support. "You've built something amazing already, Emma," he told her one night as they sat together in the cafe, watching the last of the customers leave. "You've proven that you can do this. Expanding is just the next chapter, and I know you're ready." His belief in her meant the world, and for the first time, Emma felt like she was truly ready to take that leap. But just as everything seemed to be falling into place, life threw another challenge their way. Kevin's company had been expanding too, and with his growing responsibilities, he was required to travel even more. The constant back and forth, the late nights, and the stress of his role were starting to take a toll on him. Emma noticed the changes before he said anything. He seemed more distant, more exhausted, and though he tried to mask it with his usual smile, she could see the weight he was carrying. One evening, after he returned from a particularly long business trip, Emma found him sitting on their couch, staring blankly at the television. She could tell he hadn't been resting. "Kevin, what's going on?" she asked softly, sitting next to him. "You've been working nonstop, and I can see it's starting to get to you." Kevin sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know," he admitted, his voice weary. "It's just been a lot lately. The new role, the travel, everything. I feel like I'm running on empty." Emma reached for his hand, squeezing it gently. "I know you're doing your best, but you can't keep going like this," she said, her voice filled with concern. "You need to take care of yourself too." Kevin looked at her, his expression softening. "I know. I just feel like there's always something more to do, and I don't want to let anyone down. I don't want to let you down." Emma's heart ached for him. She knew how much he cared about his work, about their future, but she also knew that his well-being had to come first. "Kevin," she said gently, "you don't have to do it all by yourself. We're in this together, remember? We'll figure it out, but you need to take a step back and rest." For a long moment, Kevin was silent, his eyes fixed on their intertwined hands. Finally, he nodded. "You're right," he said quietly. "I've been pushing myself too hard. Maybe it's time I start taking things one step at a time." Emma smiled, relieved. "And I'll be right here, every step of the way," she said softly. "You don't have to carry the weight of the world alone." Kevin looked up at her, his expression filled with gratitude. "Thank you, Emma. I don't know what I'd do without you." Over the next few weeks, Kevin took some time to slow down. He started setting clearer boundaries at work, taking weekends off, and giving himself time to rest. Emma could see the difference. He was still busy, of course, but now he was more present, more engaged. They started spending more time together, just enjoying each other's company without the weight of deadlines hanging over them. They cooked meals together, took long walks, and made time to talk about their hopes and dreams for the future. One night, as they were sitting on the couch, watching a movie, Kevin turned to Emma with a thoughtful look in his eyes. "I've been thinking about something," he said, his voice calm. "We've talked a lot about expanding the cafe, and you know I'm fully supportive of it, but I also want us to think about the bigger picture. What do we want for our future, for our life together? I think it's time we really start planning for that." Emma looked at him, her heart swelling with affection. She had always been focused on her business, on the next step, the next goal. But Kevin was right. They had built something special together, and it was time to think about the future they wanted to create. "You're right," she said, her voice soft. "I've been so focused on the cafe, but I've never really stopped to think about what we want in the long run." Kevin smiled, his eyes warm. "I want to build a life with you, Emma. A life that's not just about work or business, but about us, about what makes us happy, about where we want to be in 5, 10, 20 years. Emma nodded, her thoughts racing. "I want that too," she said quietly. "I want to make sure that, no matter how busy we get, we never lose sight of what really matters, each other." Kevin squeezed her hand, a promise in his gesture. "We won't," he said. "We'll figure it out, together. No matter what comes next, we'll take it one step at a time." Emma smiled, feeling a renewed sense of peace. They were building something strong, not just in their careers, but in their relationship, and that was worth everything. As they sat there, side by side, watching the screen glow softly in the dim light, Emma knew that whatever the future held, they would face it together, stronger, wiser, and more committed than ever before. As the months went by, Emma and Kevin continued to navigate their shared path, and each day felt like a new chapter in their story. Emma's cafe was thriving, but she knew that success didn't just happen overnight. It took determination, sacrifice, and a lot of hard work. The feeling of accomplishment she had when she saw the cafe bustling with customers each day was something she had dreamed about for so long, and now it was a reality. Still, the balance they had worked hard to create was continuously tested. Kevin's work was demanding, and his travel schedule remained packed. Though he was doing everything he could to be present in their relationship, Emma noticed the long hours starting to wear on him again. He would return from trips looking exhausted, his mind clearly elsewhere, and Emma could tell that the stress from his job was once again starting to take a toll. One evening, after a week that had seemed particularly draining for both of them, Emma found Kevin sitting at the kitchen table, a pile of paperwork spread out in front of him. His brow furrowed in concentration, But there was a faraway look in his eyes that told Emma he wasn't just focused on the task at hand. She walked over to him, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Hey," she said softly. "How are you holding up?" Kevin looked up at her, his face tired but smiling faintly. "I'm fine," he replied, though his tone didn't quite match the words. "Just a lot to manage. I need to get this done tonight." Emma knelt down next to him, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "You've been working so hard, Kevin. I don't want you to burn yourself out." Kevin sighed, rubbing his temples. "I know. There's always something more to do. I'm trying to keep up, but it's hard to find time for anything else." Emma's heart ached for him. She knew how much he cared about his work, but she also knew that it wasn't healthy for him to be constantly on the go without any rest. "Kevin," she said gently, her voice steady, "I think it's time you took a break. You've been pushing yourself so hard, and I don't want to see you get sick or overwhelmed." Kevin's eyes softened at her concern, but he shook his head. "I can't just stop, Emma. There's too much at stake. I need to keep going." Emma took a deep breath, trying to find the right words. "You don't have to do this alone, Kevin. I'm here for you, and we've already talked about how important it is to make time for each other. You can't sacrifice your health for your career. You matter more than any job." Kevin looked at her, clearly conflicted. "I know you're right, but it's hard to let go of the pressure. I don't want to let you down, and I don't want to fall behind." Emma smiled softly, sitting beside him at the table. "You're not letting me down, Kevin. You're doing your best, and that's all I can ask for. We'll figure it out together, like we always do." Kevin sighed deeply, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know what I'd do without you," he said, his voice filled with a mix of gratitude and exhaustion. "You're always so understanding." Emma placed a hand on his, her touch light but firm. "You don't have to do it all alone, Kevin. You've got me, and we're in this together. If you need to take a step back for a while, I'll support you." For a long moment, Kevin didn't say anything. He just stared at the papers in front of him, lost in thought. Finally, he let out a breath and nodded slowly. "Maybe I do need a break," he admitted quietly. "I've been running on empty for a while, and I can't keep going like this." Emma's heart swelled with relief, knowing he was finally acknowledging what he needed. "Good," she said softly. "Let's take some time to focus on us. We've been so focused on work that we've forgotten what it feels like to just be together." Kevin smiled at her, his eyes softening. "You're right. I've been so caught up in everything else that I haven't made enough time for us." Emma squeezed his hand. "Then let's make up for lost time." Over the next few days, Kevin started taking more time off. He cut back on his work hours and prioritized their time together. They spent evenings cooking dinner, enjoying quiet moments at the café, and even took a weekend trip to a nearby town for some much-needed rest. It was exactly what they both needed, a chance to reconnect and recharge. As they spent time together, Emma realized just how much they had been through. They had both faced obstacles and challenges, yet here they were, stronger than ever. She was proud of everything they had built, not just in terms of her café or his career, but in their relationship. They had learned to communicate, to support one another, and most importantly, to keep each other a priority. One night, as they sat on the couch watching a movie, Kevin turned to Emma with a serious look in his eyes. "I've been thinking a lot lately about what's next for us," he said, his voice quiet but filled with intent. Emma looked at him, curious. "What do you mean?" she asked. Kevin reached out, gently taking her hand in his. "I've been thinking about how we keep building this life together," he said. "How we keep growing, not just as individuals, but as a couple. And I want you to know, no matter what happens, I'm in this with you. I want us to keep moving forward together." Emma smiled, feeling her heart swell with love. "I want that too," she said softly, squeezing his hand. "I'm in this with you too." Kevin smiled, his expression filled with relief and affection. "Good," he said, pulling her close. "Because I don't want anything to come between us. I want to keep building this life with you." Emma leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder, feeling more content than she had in a long time. They had learned to balance their work, their dreams, and their relationship, and together, they had created something special. Whatever the future held, Emma knew that with Kevin by her side, they could face anything together. The journey they had started was far from over, but with each other, they were ready for whatever came next. As the days went by, Emma and Kevin's life together seemed to settle into a comfortable rhythm. Emma's cafe continued to grow, and with each passing day, She became more confident in her role as a business owner. The early challenges of getting the cafe off the ground seemed like distant memories now. She had built something from the ground up, and it was thriving in a way she had always dreamed of. Yet, despite her success, she remained humble, always striving to make it better, to reach more people, and to improve the experience for every customer who walked through her doors. Kevin's career, too, was flourishing. His promotion had opened doors to new opportunities, and while the travel still took him away from home more often than she liked, they had learned to make it work. The time apart made their moments together more meaningful, and both of them appreciated those quiet evenings when they could simply be with each other, no distractions, no pressures. It was during one of those quiet evenings that Kevin brought up a topic they had touched on briefly before, but never truly addressed. They were sitting on the couch after dinner, sipping their favorite wine, when Kevin turned to Emma with a contemplative look in his eyes. "I've been thinking," he started, his voice filled with a sense of purpose. "We've been talking about the future for a while now, but I think it's time we start thinking about where we want to be, not just in terms of our work, but in life, as a couple." Emma looked at him, intrigued but cautious. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice soft, sensing the seriousness in his tone. Kevin took a deep breath, his fingers gently tracing the rim of his wine glass. "I've been thinking about how we can make our life together more than just about the cafe and my job," he continued. "I want to know where we see ourselves in a few years, what kind of life we want to build outside of work, outside of all the hustle. I want us to have a life that's balanced, that's about living, not just achieving." Emma paused, her thoughts swirling. She had always been focused on achieving her goals, building her business, and creating a future for herself. But hearing Kevin's words made her realize how much she had neglected the other side of things, the life they wanted to share, beyond the daily grind of work. "I've been so focused on my business and on making sure everything is running smoothly," she admitted. "I haven't really thought about what kind of life we want to build beyond that. I've just been going, but I want more. I want us to be happy together, not just individually." Kevin smiled, his hand finding hers on the table. "Exactly. I want us to have a future where we don't just survive, but thrive. Where we have time for each other, where we create memories that are about more than just our work. I know we both have dreams, but I want us to make sure we're living those dreams together." Emma felt a warmth spread through her chest at his words. She had always known that Kevin was different. He wasn't just someone who cared about his career, but someone who cared about their life together. He wasn't content to just work hard and hope everything would fall into place. He wanted to build something meaningful with her, not just for her. "I want that too," she said, her voice steady now, filled with the same conviction. "I want to make sure we have a future where we're truly living, where we make time for what matters, for each other. It's so easy to get caught up in everything, but we need to make time for what's important." Kevin leaned forward, his expression soft but determined. "Then let's start planning. Let's figure out what we want to do with our future, and let's make it happen. Together." Emma smiled, feeling a surge of excitement and possibility. They had already built so much, and now it was time to think about the next steps, not just as business partners or lovers, but as life partners, creating a future they both could enjoy. Over the next few weeks, Emma and Kevin started discussing their vision for the future in earnest. They talked about where they wanted to live long-term, about what kind of lifestyle they wanted to have. They discussed travel, experiences, the balance between work and play, and the importance of building a life where both of their dreams could be realized, not at the expense of one another, but in harmony. It wasn't easy to find that balance. Kevin's work still required a lot of his time and attention, and Emma's cafe was growing, which meant more responsibilities and more time spent away from each other. But they both understood the importance of prioritizing their relationship, of ensuring that they remained connected no matter how busy life got. One night, after a long day, they sat down with a cup of tea and began to sketch out their plans. They talked about taking a long vacation, something that wasn't just a weekend getaway, but a true escape, something to recharge and refocus. They also talked about expanding the cafe, but with the understanding that they would do it at a pace that felt comfortable, ensuring that it didn't overtake their personal lives. Kevin even brought up the idea of possibly looking for a house in a quieter part of town, somewhere they could both enjoy a slower pace, somewhere that would allow them to spend more time together, less focused on the pressures of the city. As they spoke, Emma realized just how much their priorities had shifted. What had once been a relentless pursuit of success was now a pursuit of balance, of building a life they could both be proud of, one where their love, their careers, and their personal happiness all intertwined. I think we're on the right track, Emma said, looking at Kevin with a sense of peace. We have everything we need right here. We just have to make sure we don't lose sight of what's important. Kevin smiled, his hand finding hers once again. We won't, he said, because I'm in this with you, every step of the way. And with that, Emma knew they were ready for whatever came next. They had built a solid foundation, one that would support them through the challenges and changes life would inevitably bring. Together, they were ready to face the future, not just with ambition, but with love, understanding, and a deep commitment to each other. As Emma and Kevin began to carve out their future together, things seemed to be falling into place. The cafe was growing, and with each passing month, Emma felt a deeper sense of pride in what she had built. She had worked tirelessly to get to this point, but the rewards were becoming more apparent. The lines of people waiting for their morning coffee, the compliments from regular customers, and the sense of community she had fostered all made the challenges worthwhile. Kevin, too, was thriving in his role. He had managed to strike a better balance between his demanding job and his personal life. He wasn't traveling as much as he used to, and the time they spent together felt richer, more fulfilling. Emma could see the changes in him. He seemed less burdened, more present, and, most importantly, more relaxed. Their weekends together had become sacred. They would spend time walking through the park, enjoying a quiet dinner at a local restaurant, or simply staying in and watching movies, savoring the peace of each other's company. It was during one of those weekends that Kevin broached the subject of something that had been on his mind for some time. They were sitting in their favorite spot at the cafe, enjoying a rare Saturday afternoon with no pressing business matters to attend to. Kevin leaned back in his chair, his eyes studying Emma's face. I've been thinking a lot about what we've built here, he said, his voice thoughtful. And I've been wondering if it's time to take another step forward, not just with the business, but with our life together. Emma looked up from her coffee, her brow furrowed slightly with curiosity. What do you mean? She asked, her heart rate picking up a bit at his serious tone. Kevin smiled, a glimmer of excitement in his eyes. I've been thinking that maybe it's time for us to start looking at the next big step. Maybe it's time to buy a place, somewhere we can truly make our own, somewhere we can settle down. Emma's heart skipped a beat. They had talked about the future before, but the idea of buying a home, of truly putting down roots, was a step she hadn't expected to come so soon. She had always been focused on the cafe, on making it successful, and had put personal dreams like buying a house on the back burner. But now, hearing Kevin's words, something shifted inside her. I've been thinking about that too, she admitted softly. I love the idea of creating a home for us. A place where we can build our lives, a place that's just ours. Kevin's eyes softened, and he reached across the table, taking her hand in his. I want that, Emma. I want us to have a space where we can both grow, where we can look forward to coming home at the end of the day, where we can share our lives without the pressures of work hanging over us all the time. Emma smiled, feeling the warmth of his words fill her heart. It felt like a natural progression, buying a home together, a place where they could start their next chapter. But at the same time, it was a big decision, one that would require careful thought and planning. I think we're ready for that, Emma said, her voice filled with conviction. But we should take our time, look at different areas, and figure out what really feels right for us. Kevin nodded, squeezing her hand gently. Of course, we'll do this the right way, together. We'll find a place that feels like home. Over the next few months, Emma and Kevin started their search. They spent weekends visiting different neighborhoods, touring homes, and discussing what kind of place they wanted. They knew they wanted something spacious, a place with room for the cafe business to expand, a home where they could entertain friends and family, and a space that reflected who they were as a couple. The process wasn't without its challenges. They found a few places they loved, but were out of their price range, while others didn't quite feel like the right fit. But as they continued to search, something began to click. They found a neighborhood that felt perfect, a quiet, tree-lined street just outside the city, with a beautiful old house that had potential. The moment they stepped inside, they knew it was the one. The house had character, charm, and just the right amount of space. It wasn't perfect, but it was the kind of place they could make their own. They could see themselves there, building their future together. After weeks of careful consideration, they made an offer, and soon enough, they were the proud owners of their first home. It was a milestone, a moment that signified a new chapter in their lives. The moving process was a whirlwind, but with Kevin's help, Emma was able to balance her time between the cafe and settling into their new home. They spent weekends painting walls, choosing furniture, and organizing their space to make it feel like theirs. Slowly but surely, the house began to feel like home. They even set aside a little nook in the corner of the living room to create a small office space for Emma, where she could plan the next steps for her cafe business. As they settled into their new home, Emma felt a sense of peace she hadn't realized she was missing. There was something grounding about having a place that was theirs, a place where they could build their future. Kevin, too, seemed more at ease. The decision to invest in a home had been a big one, but it had also brought them closer together. They were no longer just building their careers, they were building their lives. As they stood together in their new living room, looking out the window at the sunset, Emma knew that they had made the right choice. This home wasn't just a place to live, it was the foundation of their future. "I can't believe this is ours," Emma said softly, her voice filled with awe. Kevin smiled, wrapping his arm around her. "It's just the beginning," he said. "But I'm excited for what's to come. With you, Emma, I know anything is possible." Emma smiled, her heart full of love and gratitude. "Me too, Kevin. I'm ready for whatever comes next." And with that, they stood together in their new home, ready to face the future, hand in hand. As Emma and Kevin settled into their new home, life began to feel even more grounded. They had reached a milestone, one that symbolized their commitment to each other, both in their personal lives and in their shared dreams. The home was more than just a physical space. It was a reflection of what they had built together, a foundation for their future. The unpacking process had been surprisingly smooth, with Emma and Kevin working side by side, deciding where everything should go, laughing at their mismatched furniture, and daydreaming about the life they were creating. They spent evenings enjoying the small but significant things, cooking together in their new kitchen, putting up photos, and taking long walks around their new neighborhood. It was in these simple moments that Emma truly felt the warmth of what they had created. One Sunday afternoon, as they sat on their porch, Kevin turned to her, his expression thoughtful. "I've been thinking a lot about what comes next for us," he said, his voice gentle. Emma looked at him, intrigued. "What do you mean?" she asked, setting her coffee cup down. Kevin smiled, but there was a hint of seriousness in his eyes. "We've come so far already, with the cafe and our new place. But I'm starting to think it might be time to take the next big step, to think about what's ahead. We've talked about it before, but I think we need to start planning for the future." Emma felt a mix of curiosity and excitement at his words. "What kind of future?" she asked, her heart skipping a beat. Kevin paused, his eyes meeting hers. "I'm talking about something bigger. Maybe it's time to think about starting a family." Emma's breath caught in her chest. The idea of having children had always been something they discussed lightly, but hearing Kevin say it so seriously made it feel more real. She hadn't expected to have this conversation now, but looking at Kevin, she knew it was a natural next step for them. "You mean kids?" she asked, her voice soft, unsure of what to say next. Kevin nodded slowly. "Yeah, I know it's a big decision, but I think we're ready for it. We've built a strong foundation with our relationship, our careers, and now our home. I feel like we're in a good place to start thinking about growing our family." Emma's mind raced. She had always imagined one day becoming a mother, but she had never really considered the timing. There were so many things she wanted to accomplish with her business, and Kevin's career was still demanding. But as she looked at him, she realized that he was right. They had a strong relationship, a solid foundation, and now they had a home to raise children in. It was a big step, but it was also an exciting one. "I've thought about it too," Emma said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "I think I'm ready, Kevin. I want us to be a family, to take that next step together." Kevin's face lit up with a smile. "You do?" he asked, his voice filled with relief and joy. Emma nodded, squeezing his hand. "I do. I think we've made something beautiful together, and now it's time to think about the next chapter." They sat there for a while, holding hands in silence, both lost in their thoughts about what the future would hold. The decision to start a family wasn't something to be taken lightly, but in that moment, Emma felt a deep sense of peace. They had come so far, and they were ready for whatever came next. As they moved forward with the idea of expanding their family, Emma and Kevin continued to support each other in their individual goals. The cafe was flourishing, and Emma was learning to manage the growing demands of the business while also planning for their future. Kevin, too, was finding ways to manage his work-life balance, ensuring that he could be present for Emma as they both embarked on this new journey. They spent more time together, focusing on their relationship and strengthening their connection. They took trips to relax, spent quiet evenings at home, and enjoyed simple moments that made their bond even stronger. In the weeks that followed, Emma and Kevin started researching everything they needed to know about starting a family. They talked about what it would mean for their careers, their lifestyle, and their future. They visited doctors, made plans, and talked about their hopes and dreams for their children. Emma even started thinking about how to make her cafe more family-friendly, knowing that one day she would be balancing motherhood with running her business. Kevin, too, began to think about how his career might shift once they had children. He wanted to be there for Emma, to be involved in raising their family, but he also knew that his job would require flexibility. Together, they made a plan, one that would allow them to continue building their future while welcoming a new chapter of their lives. As they sat in their living room one evening, talking about the details of their plans, Emma realized just how far they had come. They had faced challenges, but each time they overcame one, they grew stronger. Now, as they looked forward to the future, Emma felt a renewed sense of excitement and hope. She had always dreamed of having a family, and now, with Kevin by her side, she knew they were ready to take on this next adventure together. "I'm so excited for what's ahead," she said, her voice filled with hope. Kevin smiled, wrapping his arm around her. "Me too. We're going to make this work, just like everything else." Together, Emma rested her head on his shoulder, feeling more certain than ever that they were ready for whatever came next. The future was full of possibilities, and with Kevin by her side, she knew they could handle anything life had in store. Together, they would build a family, a life full of love, and a future that was everything they had dreamed of. And with that thought, Emma felt the warmth of their future together, knowing that it would be filled with joy, challenges, and love, just as it had always been. Months passed, and Emma and Kevin's life seemed to move forward with a steady rhythm. The cafe was thriving, and with every passing day, Emma felt more confident and at peace with the direction her life was taking. Kevin's career had stabilized, and though there were still busy moments, they had learned to balance their ambitions with the quiet moments that kept their relationship strong. It wasn't always easy, but they had learned to support each other, to communicate openly, and to cherish the little things that mattered most. As their lives continued to evolve, their dreams for the future only grew. They had spent countless evenings talking about their plans, not just as individuals, but as a couple. They had built something beautiful together, and now it was time to think about what the next chapter would look like. One afternoon, as they sat in the sunlit living room of their new home, Kevin turned to Emma, his eyes thoughtful. "You know," he said, his voice quiet, "I've been thinking a lot about everything we've talked about. Our future, our family, our business. And I think we're in a really good place." Emma looked at him, feeling a wave of affection. "I feel the same way," she replied, her heart swelling with love. "We've come so far, and it feels like everything is finally falling into place." Kevin smiled, but there was a seriousness in his gaze. "I've been thinking about what comes next for us. We've talked about starting a family, and I know we're both ready for that. But there's something else I've been considering. I think it's time to take another step, to think about how we can leave a legacy, something that lasts." Emma raised an eyebrow, curious. "What do you mean?" she asked. Kevin paused for a moment, gathering his thoughts. "I've been thinking about expanding the cafe, maybe even starting a chain, or finding ways to give back to the community. We've built something meaningful, but I want to make sure we're not just living for today. I want to create something that lasts, something that makes an impact long after we're gone." Emma sat back, absorbing his words. She had always been focused on the here and now, the cafe, her business, and their growing life together. But hearing Kevin's vision for the future sparked something inside her. She had always dreamed of making a difference, of doing something that would leave a lasting mark. The idea of building a legacy, of creating something bigger than just their lives, felt both exciting and overwhelming. That's a big idea, Emma said softly. But I love it. I think it's time we think bigger, not just for us, but for the future, for the people who come after us. Kevin's face lit up with a smile. I knew you'd be on board, he said, his voice filled with excitement. We've got the drive, the vision, and the passion to make it happen. They spent the rest of the afternoon talking about their dreams for the future, about expanding the cafe, about creating a brand that was about more than just coffee, but about community and connection. They talked about the possibility of giving back to the community that had supported them, about creating opportunities for others, and about how they could leave a legacy that was bigger than themselves. As the days passed, Emma and Kevin continued to work toward their new goals. They started making plans to expand the cafe, researching locations for a second shop, and considering the logistics of growing their business while still maintaining the personal touch that made their cafe unique. They knew it wouldn't be easy, but they were ready to face the challenges together, just as they always had. But as they looked ahead, they also took time to enjoy the present. They knew how important it was to live in the moment, to savor the quiet evenings together, the weekends spent exploring new places, and the simple joys that life had to offer. One evening, as they sat on the porch of their home, watching the sunset, Emma turned to Kevin, her heart full. I've never been this happy, Kevin, she said, her voice soft but filled with sincerity. I've built my dream, and I've got you by my side. It feels like everything is falling into place. Kevin smiled, taking her hand in his. And we're just getting started, he said. We've got so much more ahead of us, so many dreams to chase, and I wouldn't want to do it with anyone else. Emma looked out at the horizon, the colors of the sunset painting the sky in warm hues. She felt a sense of peace wash over her. Knowing that with Kevin by her side, she was ready for whatever the future held. They had built something beautiful together, both in their personal lives and in their business. And now, with the future stretching out before them, Emma knew they were ready to face whatever challenges and joys came their way. They had a foundation of love, support, and shared dreams. Together, they could build a future that was even brighter than they had ever imagined. The road ahead wouldn't always be easy, but Emma and Kevin knew that as long as they were together, there was nothing they couldn't achieve. And with that thought, Emma felt a deep sense of gratitude for the life they had created, one filled with love, growth, and endless possibilities. She squeezed Kevin's hand, and with a smile, she whispered, "Let's do this. Together." And in that moment, they both knew that the future was theirs to shape, and with each other's support, they could turn their dreams into reality. I end this captivating story of love, ambition, and personal growth. Two individuals embark on a journey of success, building a life together while overcoming challenges and achieving their dreams. From humble beginnings to becoming successful entrepreneurs, their path mirrors the kind of inspirational millionaire stories that motivate others to pursue their goals. Along the way, they support each other through difficult decisions, such as opening a cafe, expanding businesses, and balancing demanding careers. As they grow closer, they realize that their dreams can become a reality when they work together, drawing strength from their bond. As the story unfolds, the couple continues to build their future, and the legacy they leave behind speaks to the heart of millionaire stories, stories of resilience, perseverance, and love. Through every obstacle, their determination only strengthens, and as they face the future, they know that together they can conquer anything that comes their way. These millionaire stories prove that success is not only about financial achievements, but about the relationships we build, the support we give, and the dreams we turn into reality. This couple's journey is a testament to what happens when love and ambition combine, creating a life that's fulfilling both professionally and personally. As they plan for the future, they build their empire and a legacy that will inspire others to chase their dreams. The story emphasizes how millionaire stories are not just about material wealth, but about living a life full of purpose, love, and the drive to help others succeed. Together, they show us that with hard work, determination, and love, anyone can create their own millionaire story.